Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's beautiful Friday, August 22nd, 2025. Here, welcome back to the Hotel Orloff. I have a day off today. I thought I'd make a video, talk about something that I thought was of consequence that I encountered last night. Well, let me first start by going back in time to those misty days of the 1970s and 80s. Man, I was a kid that collected comic books, man. I was one of those idiots, right? And I thought I was alone. When I lived in San Antonio, there were a handful of other kids, and we made our own comic books and stuff. And yeah, but there weren't many, you know. And people that did collect comics in the 1970s kind of kept undercover, right? It wasn't really good for your social status. Well, I remember the summer of Star Wars. I was 12, the summer of 77, and something else significant happened that summer, just by chance. A comic book store opened within a few miles of me. You know, walking distance. It was called Lone Star Comics, and it's still kind of called that, because if you order from mycomicshop.com, I think the receipt says Lone Star Comics. Mycomicshop.com is just the mail order arm of Lone Star Comics, which was a brick and mortar store, but they phased out the brick and mortar store, sold it to some other people, and they just kept the mail order. And that's still going strong, and everyone loves mycomicshop.com. They're famous for undergrading the comics. So you get something, you know, that's really in better condition than what they told you, because their philosophy is they don't want people returning comics. They want their customers to be happy. So if they tell you a comic's in good condition, it may be significantly nicer than you think. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The owner of the store is Buddy Saunders. He's still around, but he may have I'm sure his wife or son or owners now, or I don't know how it is. I have no idea. In the mid-'80s, there was a character for DC Comics called Lobo, and he was like this intergalactic alien biker type guy. And Simon Beasley, I didn't realize this till this morning, was actually kind of into the biker culture in real life, and so and he's a great artist, and he's, you know, he works with Glenn Danzig doing comics, you know, and that's great. I mean, anyway, the Lobo character was created as a parody of what Marvel was doing with the Punisher and Wolverine being basically turned into heroes. Wolverine, I guess. Actually, Wolverine and the Punisher started as villains, if you think about it. Wolverine was a villain in the Hulk comic, and the Punisher was a villain fighting against Spider-Man in The Amazing Spider-Man. And anyway, those became the most popular characters going over at Marvel, so DC did a parody. I think it was Keith Giffen, if I'm not mistaken, that created Lobo. Anyway, I never read a Lobo comic in my life, but apparently he was spun off out of the Superman comic, right? I think he started in the Omega Men or something like that, but he was a Superman villain more than a few times. Hold on, I gotta plug this phone in here because it will die in the middle of the show. Hold on. Anyway, so Lobo. Like I said, I never really read the comic. I saw some of the issues with that Simon Beasley art and thought, man, that does look good, but it was just not my thing, and in the mid 80s, I'd kind of cut down on my comic book spending because I didn't think comic books were as good anymore, but that's all a personal opinion that some people may disagree with me on. But anyway, this Lobo character, I think there was one comic where he's having to kill all his children, and he has thousands of children or something like that. It's just horrible. It was all meant to be funny in a sick way. But the thing is, you have this Lobo character in the Superman comic, which is a comic aimed at 10 to 12-year-olds. You can argue about that if you want, but traditionally comic books it's a medium aimed at children. And then you have Lobo, the same character that was in the kid comic, in a comic that's got all kinds of R-rated stuff in it of various types. And and the kid that bought the Superman comic would say, "Mommy, Daddy, can I have this comic? That's the character that I saw in Superman." And then they might buy that comic and be outraged, and all of a sudden you got like a PMRC, that went against the remember Tipper Gore and all that, going against the heavy metal music and the satanic panic, and of course the big backlash against comic books in the early 50s, causing juvenile delinquency and crime and corruption with children, and that led to the Comics Code Authority. Well, the Comics Code became a little weaker in the 80s because they started distributing comics, a lot of them directly to comic stores, and Lobo was one of those comics that didn't have to have the code because it wasn't sold on the spinner racks. Okay, so at one point, Buddy Saunders, the owner of Lone Star Comics, comes out of the back room, and this is a famous story. I've told it multiple times on this show, and I talked to one of the kids that was an employee at the time. He wasn't a kid when I talked with him, but he was there and saw it happen. And Buddy Saunders was a very calm, cool guy. Kind of reminded me of like George Lucas without the beard. Very soft-spoken, nice guy. But apparently he was really hot under the collar and spouting off a few profanities, I think. Maybe he didn't say profanities, but I think he might have. He came out of the back room and said, "That's it, I'm done with DC," because he was mad about what they were doing with Lobo, having him in the Superman comic being PG, and then being in his own R-rated comic, and he was just afraid that, if there's another backlash against comics, am I going to lose my business? Is it going to be, will there be a new Frederick Wortham that comes along, So he decided to put the DC Comics in the very back of the store, and it was a big, giant store, bigger by far than this room. It was big, and so the DC Comics, you'd have to walk to the very back of the store to get the DC Comics. And before that location was Lone Star Comics, it was a place called General Bookstore. In the very back of the stores where they had the naughty magazines and paperbacks, in the very back, that's where they were. You had to go through some swinging saloon doors to get to them. And he's put the DC Comics back where they used to put the, he was pissed at DC, basically. And I think it got into the Comics Journal. It became kind of a famous story about, all of that. So, anyway, I understand now more than ever why he was upset. Now, James Gunn is a guy came out of Trauma Films. I've heard interviews with him over the years, where he sounds pretty cool, talking about his favorite comic book as a kid was Scamp, the Disney comic Scamp, who was the kid of Lady and the Tramp. And things like, it's just like, man, I can really relate to this guy. He seemed like a nice, and he really understood comics, and that comics are a fun thing. I gotta turn the sound down because I don't want to get a copyright claim. This is a Deke Dickerson video. It's got Pinup Palmer. It's a new Deke Dickerson video. Pinup Palmer is Gwen Gooley on the Sven Gooley show. Anyway, she's got her in this video. Okay, so let me get back on track. Where was I? Okay, James Gunn. I liked his movie called, it was called Super, wasn't it? About the superhero that his power was hitting people with a wrench. And that was a fun movie, and he's always had a kind of a twisted punk rock sense of humor. And then he worked on he directed Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought that movie was terrific, and I liked the other two as well. And right before, after the second Guardians of the Galaxy, Trump was president then, and James Gunn was insulting Trump in social media. So some Trump people went all the way back in James Gunn's Twitter history and found that, I don't know, 10 years before, every one of his Twitter posts was humor that was so foul and awful that it wasn't funny. But it was about some of the worst things you can imagine that I don't even want to talk about. So, and it was constantly that. The stuff that, they always talk about Hollywood being part of. And I thought, well, maybe he's just making fun of other people in Hollywood because he knows what they're into with their evil predilections. But anyway, the evil Disney, actually fired him. And then they realized we got to get him back. No one else can do Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So they brought him back. In the meantime, he had gone over and done the Suicide Squad for DC. The DC at the time had this dark, malevolent, kind of depressing, not always, but depressing world of the DC superheroes they were doing with Zack Snyder. Where everything was glum and Batman was killing people by the dozen, and I don't know, it was a good one good Wonder Woman movie, but and there were little flashes of brilliance here and there, but it was just kind of a depressing sludge of stuff. Although there were some cool images that I remember from that, but anyway, they made a Suicide Squad movie that was terrible. So he came in and did a second Suicide Squad movie that I thought was really good, but it was it was R-rated, and it was but it involved villains, characters that it didn't have the major hero. I don't know. At the time, the DC movies were so kind of evil feeling that Suicide Squad didn't seem so out of place. And I like that. I like that movie. And then right after that, there was a Peacemaker series, first season. And that seems so long ago. That was back when people were still wearing those masks in the stores. A lot of people were. So that was when before we left the old country. So that's, I'd say 3.5 years ago is when the Punisher Peacemaker, season 1 was on the air. And I liked that series, even though, James Gunn has this tendency to want to dwell on, he seems to really like John Cena, this wrestler who's got this, he looks very moronic. He's kind of got this, he kind of just seems like there's something wrong with him, but he's likable because he's just such a goofy dummy that you kind of like the guy. He's so earnest and everything, but he's just looks, but James Gunn seems to like to dwell on him in his underwear or his rear end, giving you shots of that for no particular reason other than it's kind of like when John Derrick photographed Bo Derek, and it's like obvious. It's like that's kind of the way James Gunn likes to photograph, likes to film John Cena. It's like he's a little too into his physique, but I don't know. Maybe, yeah, I do know it's creepy, but I like season one, right? So then, you know, James Gunn does Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3, and then he gets hired over at DC to helm. They're scrapping the Zack Snyder world, and they're starting fresh. They're letting James Gunn start fresh, a guy that understands comics, and okay, all right. He's going to do a Superman movie. It's like, wow. And I look at the casting. Rachel Brosnahan is Lois Lane. He's got Jimmy Olsen in it, and Zack Snyder in those DC movies. He killed Jimmy Olsen off in the first 4 minutes of Batman versus Superman without even saying it was Jimmy Olsen. And he said, there's just no place for Jimmy Olsen in my cinematic world, It's like, okay. So, well, the first thing that James Gunn premieres as part of his new take on the DC universe is the Creature Commandos, which was a World War II group of monsters fighting against the Germans, but he has it set in modern times, fighting against neo-Nazis that are his. Basically, he's saying Trump supporters, and he has them all killed. Horror. I remember now it was a cartoon, but it was meant for adults. Even though he has all these characters in it that are that the Creature Commandos in Weird War Tales, that was a comic sold to 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds. I mean, that was what the target market of Weird War Tales was, not 60-year-old men or 45-year-old men. I mean, they would read the comics, but they were aimed at kids. And he has Sergeant Rock in one episode, I think a flashback to World War II, and I'm drinking this crap. I can't believe I bought this because this rots holes in your brain, whatever this stuff is. But I'm just experimenting. Okay, so I never finished that Creature Commandos series. I just couldn't take it. And the animation style was kind of this weird, sort of a take on Eon Flux, but not as good. I didn't like it. Okay, so he makes the Superman movie. And Peacemaker's in it in a little scene and everything. And there's characters that were in the Creature Commandos. The Rick Flag senior character was in Creature Commandos, and he's in Superman. And okay, so I gave a glowing review to Superman. I loved the movie. When I drove almost an hour to see it in another town, I thought it was just great. I got a chance to see it again about a week ago when it finally came to town here. I still loved it the second time. I saw little problems with it the second time that I had seen the first time, but I chose to gloss over. And maybe because my wife was just not, she was in a lot of pain and just was having a lot of pain sitting there with her back and things. It was really, I could tell she was just not having a good time. It was almost like, should we leave? So that might have brought my but anyway, I noticed things like well, why is, and I didn't mind the first time, I thought, okay, Supergirl's a drunk, but maybe in the Supergirl movie that's coming out next summer, it'll give her a way to grow and overcome that, and she'll be a hero at the end. It'll give her a path, a journey. And Crypto was not the heroic, noble dog that I remember from the comics, but I thought, well, okay, I know dogs that are like that, and it was fun and funny and everything. And there were a few things, some profanity and stuff that maybe didn't need to be in a kids movie. I'll be right back. Hold on a second. And there were just someone asked me in the comments under my video, and I said I'd give that movie a 10. Heck with it. I really enjoyed it. Just like I really enjoyed the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Really enjoyed Suicides, the Suicide Squad. You know it's James Gunn's because it has the word "the" at the beginning. Okay, so last night premieres the second season, 3.5 years later, of The Peacemaker. And it shows clips from last season, some of which I'd forgotten, like Peacemaker. Peacemaker's father, is this superhero he's like a kind of an evil racist superhero, and he raises his two sons to be, he's just a drunk, and he has his sons fighting each other, and everyone's betting on who's going to win, and Peacemaker hits his brother too hard and kills him, and so I'd forgotten that part. That's all something that was added. Peacemaker is a character that goes back to the mid-'60s with Charlton Comics. It wasn't a DC Comics character at all to begin with. DC bought all the Charlton characters in the early 80s. And then Alan Moore was going to use them for the Watchmen miniseries, but they said, maybe we shouldn't turn all those characters evil. Why don't we kind of save those characters, and you create your own new characters that are kind of like these Charlton characters. So anyway, Peacemaker became the comedian in the Watchmen. Anyway, okay, so if I believe Peacemaker was supposed to start next month in September, but from what I heard, HBO Max moved it up to August. So supposedly that's why James Gunn released Superman digitally last week, because he says, I want people to see Superman before they see Peacemaker. Okay, so he definitely wants people that watch Superman to then see Peacemaker. So there are elements in Peacemaker that come from the movie Superman, where it would really help if you saw that movie first to kind of understand. Okay, so watching, basically, I'm not going to ruin anything, but they make reference to Lex Luthor and how he was able to open up holes into pocket universes and other dimensions, which is what happened in the Superman movie, and then it created a problem where the Earth was splitting in two, that Superman and Mr. Terrific or Tom Terrific or whatever had to help fix. I just discovered this musical artist named Bethlehem Shalom. This lady here, I don't know. Her music is fantastic. She's kind of like Amy Winehouse, but without the drug use, and it's 60s style. It's I think she's great. How I discovered her, I saw the Suffragettes. I saw a poster for the Suffragettes, which is like a female Ventures, out of Canada. They're great. And they had their opening act was Bethlehem Shalom. Shalom. And I thought, well, who is Bethlehem Shalom? And I looked her up, and she's just this great, like, 60s singer. It's good stuff. But anyway, off topic. So, if you were a kid that watched the Superman movie in July, you'd kind of want to see the Peacemaker because, well, you've got Green Lantern appears in it, who was a character in Superman, hot girl, and I won't tell you anything that's not in the trailer, but if you don't want to hear this, just fast forward a couple of minutes. Peacemaker's trying to join the Justice Gang, which is the name that Green Lantern wants to call what would become the Justice League. So they're like the founding members, and the Justice Gang is being funded by Maxwell Lord, who's James Gunn's brother, clearly because he looks just like him. Anyway, so he goes to an interview, and man, they're talking about things I don't even want to talk about on this show. The humor consistently goes to some of the most vile things, about Green Lantern having a vomit fetish, liking to be vomited on, and it's like, why? And it's just like, what are they doing? And then at a certain point, Peacemaker's depressed, and this is in the trailer, so I'm not giving anything away. He just starts smoking pot and doing cocaine, and then it all of a sudden, there's an orgy scene that looks like something out of Caligula. It's more explicit than anything that used to be on Showtime after dark. It's I would say if it wouldn't get an R rating in a theater, I don't think any movie's been given an NC-17 in years, but it would definitely be an NC-17. It's explicit. It's and it goes on and on, and that's happening in the house that I guess Peacemaker's invited some friends over, and it's in the house that he's inherited from his father after he shoots his father in the forehead in the first season. And so it's got his interdimensional lab or whatever that he opens up, and it goes into another dimension in the back, and that's where it ties in with Lex Luthor, what Lex Luthor did at Superman, and Rick Flag, who was the guy that arrested Superman in the Superman movies, talking about what Lex Luthor did. And there's on television they're talking about Metropolis and Arkham Asylum, and but that scene is explicit, and the far more than the first season. But in the first season, you weren't coming off of a big major summer kid-friendly movie, as kid-friendly as Hollywood is able to do with the Superman movie. And this acts is like kind of a indirect sequel to that Superman movie, and then you're putting all this extreme stuff into it, and I don't know, I haven't heard what people on YouTube are saying, whether or not is there going to be a backlash, or people just going to say, oh, cool. But honestly, if I was in charge of Warner Brothers, if they had to have seen what James Gunn created, I would fire him. And as much as I just said I like James Gunn and I've liked his movies, I would get him the hell away, because now I all this stuff I've tried to rationalize, his Twitter history, the little things he's put into his movies, The little, he wants to use the Guy Gardner Green Lantern first as a founding member of the Justice League instead of the real Green Lantern that was the founding member, Hal Jordan, because Hal Jordan, you're not going to be able, it's not going to be funny to have him say the F word and stuff, because you know that Hal Jordan would never do that. So he wants this creepy 1980s, 1990s character, although I know the character goes back to 1970, but they didn't turn him into the jerk persona until after the Crisis on Infinite Earths, whatever. And using the Hawk Girl character instead of Hawkman, because Hawkman would be kind of too straight-laced the character, I think, too, to be spouting off curse words and all that. And it was just, I can't really even remember now because I was watching it late last night because I knew I didn't have to work today. It just struck me as really wrong. And I was I felt like I was channeling Buddy Saunders' anger back in the 1980s about Lobo, that clearly only an idiot wouldn't think if I was a 10 or 12-year-old that had just seen Superman, I would really want to see the Peacemaker show. I'd try to figure out a way to see it, and then I would be exposed to some of the most vile stuff. It's really wrong. And people want to object to the Cracker Barrel being changed. The sign was changed. They changed the decor inside because these liberals want to get rid. They just want to change things, and I don't know why. I do know why. It's demonic, man, to bait and switch and have a kid-friendly movie which directly points towards, with the dimensional holes into other dimensions, with the multiple characters that were in Superman or in Peacemaker. Peacemaker was in Superman. Rick Flag was in Superman. Hawk Girl, Green Lantern. Oh, and then there was a scene at the very last episode of Peacemaker first season. That's when the DC universe was the Zack Snyder universe was starting to crumble. And as I recall, the Justice League show up too late. And you see them kind of in silhouette coming down. Superman and Aquaman and I don't know, they're all there. Wonder Woman. But in the scene at the beginning of Peacemaker, episode 1 of the second season, they recreate that scene, but now the characters that come down are the Justice Gang. You see the Guy Gardner Green Lantern and the silhouette of Superman, and so this must be a little bit later when Superman's part of that. And Hot Girl, and you see Mr. Terrific floating down in his chair. And then there's a figure over on the right. I couldn't figure out who it was. And then I see everyone all over YouTube saying, that's Supergirl. And they zoomed in on the screen. And yeah, okay, so you've got Supergirl and Superman, and you got all of them, Mr. Terrific, all in the opening of Peacemaker. So will I be the only voice crying in the wilderness saying this is wrong? And it's probably just I know what people are going to say in the comments, that just made me want to watch it more. Well, you know something? I'm going to watch the series too. I was appalled. I looked at my wife and said, I can't believe he's taking it this far. This is like extreme. This is just this side of X-rated. And it just doesn't seem right. But because, all these characters were created by people that aren't even alive anymore. and create your own characters and do your little perverse things with them. But you're playing in someone else's sandbox with someone else's toys, and you need to have respect for it. You know, I just, I don't mind really. He changed the Peacemaker character and the vigilante and judo master. These were heroes that nobody knew, honestly. There's probably 100 people in the country that know who those that know who all three of those characters are, and so it didn't really matter. It significantly affect things in the world, but still, it'd be better to create your own characters instead of shitting over other people's ideas. Oh, but the storyline is really interesting in this Peacemaker. I've talked about the negative, but the story. If I could go in there with some, and I'm not a censor, but if you could just take out about 5 minutes of footage from last night's episode and clean up a little bit of language, it would really, it would, because it's an interesting idea, and what I'm telling you is was already been spoiled by the trailer. If you've seen the trailer for the Peacemaker season 2, basically, Peacemaker's life is shambles because he had this horrible, abusive father. His brother was killed by him, by himself. He accidentally killed his brother. And so he goes through a door in this other dimension and goes into the living room, this beautiful living room of his father, and sees his father still alive and realizes, I'm in a world where my father is still alive. And then he realizes his brother is there and has grown up, and in this world, he and his grown brother and his father are all cool with each other, are all friends, and they all go out together as three superheroes flying around, and they're heroes, and everyone loves them. And it's his father's not the hated racist clan type Red Dragon or whatever the name of his character was. It's this wonderful world where the girl that he likes, that's James Gunn's wife or girlfriend that he puts in all his movies, he that's she actually likes him, and it's so he's and so I we'll find out what's going to happen and then this will be a spoiler. So skip forward about 2 minutes. Three, two, one. Okay. At the very end of the first episode, the Peacemaker of that universe is out of town and shows up, and it puts his big fancy gun. He's a much more smart looking Peacemaker, put with his costume and everything, and puts his gun to John Cena's head, and it's John Cena. It's two Peacemakers. So what are you doing here? And then their two Peacemakers have to fight it out, and then Peacemaker accidentally kills the other Peacemaker from the other world. So that means that he can go into that world at any time and be himself, and they won't know any better. And so that's going to be the premise of the rest of the season. It's going to run one episode a week on Wednesday nights on HBO Max. Fascinating premise. It's just that he pushes it so far that I just don't think it's right. And I still like James Gunn, but I know he's part of that evil club. He's like, it's almost like I wish we could just pray for him and get him over to our side, because I think he's got a few demons in him, but I think he knows comic books and loves them, but he lets his demons out, and I don't think that's the right place to be letting your demons out in something that's tied directly to a movie aimed at kids or the kid in older people. Superman is aimed at kids, and you could be 90 and still it's still aimed at the kid in you because that kid is still there. So it reminds me of an episode, probably one of my favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series from the 90s on the Fox network. One of the people don't talk about that enough. That was I remember when it premiered, man, I couldn't believe how great that was. I recorded every day on VHS. It was then later got the DVD set. It's yeah, before that it was Johnny Quest was the high water mark of television heroic animation, and then it's like, man, that was great. But there was an episode like this where Batman, Bruce Wayne, wakes up one day and his parents are still alive. They weren't ever killed. He's not Batman. He's engaged to Selena Kyle, who never became Catwoman. The whole world's different because his parents were never shot to death outside that movie theater. And he's got this great life. And then I'm trying to remember what happens. It seems like he wakes up or something and he realizes this has all been a hallucination from the Mad Hatter who has him tied down, is making him think that his everything's. Oh man, as I recall at the end of that episode, he beats the living heck out of the Mad Hatter. He's so upset. And yeah, and these type of premises I find interesting, like the city on the edge of forever, or the Star Trek episode. These are, what will happen if your girlfriend, this girl that you've just fallen in love with, Captain Kirk, if she doesn't die, then Hitler's gonna take over the world because
I can't find the Wi-Fi network. You might want to check the modem or router connections.
the security system can't find the Wi-Fi network because I had to unhook the extension cord. Oh, it's a long story. I'll fix it. Don't worry about it. Well, so what else has been going on, man? Um, Peacemaker. I'm watching it. I would not recommend it for the sensitive. I condemn James Gunn for going as far as he did, but overall, I mean, I still like it and hate it at the same. I like it. The characters are likable. All of the characters are likable. I like the plot. I like the production values. It's cool. It's just, man, calm down, James Gunn. You just got to see it to understand what I'm talking about. It's just like, you're overdoing it, man. You're going to ruin everything you're trying to do. And I think he maybe wants there to be a backlash from Trump MAGA people. He wants them to all get upset about the Peacemaker show, and then he can say these people are censors. It's almost like he's trying to provoke, and like a schoolyard bully just keeps poking you in the chest, wanting you to do something about it. It's almost what he seems like he's doing with what he's yeah. I don't know what to tell you about that. Well, there's nothing new, interesting here going on with me. Uh, Nothing. Um, well, Fantastic Four is playing at the theater 2 blocks from me, so I haven't seen that yet. I might go see that tonight. It only costs $7, but even that's kind of rough We've had a leaking toilet up on the 47th floor that was, the seal was, it was causing water to drip down. And there's been a few other issues, things going on with the car, and so I'm just having. When I last saw you, there was a bat. Oh, I was about to tell you a story. I remember that I was in the middle of a story, and then I discovered that my cats were killing a bat, and I had to, and it was all on. I was doing a show. It all happened just as I was filming, and I tried to get the bat outside, and then my wife said she was really mad at me watching the video because it seemed like I was annoying the bat. I mean, the bat was clearly dying. I was trying to get the bat to fly away, and then Gary Davis contacted me. He sent me a bunch of texts saying, no, you need to get the bat up into a tree. They can't take off from the ground. Well, when I captured that bat a few years ago, and he took off from the ground, but he's telling me, no, they have to be up high. They don't have the leg power to take off from the ground, or it's hard for them to. Well, I said, well, this poor bat's right wing was almost completely gone. There was a big hole in his left wing, and it looked like a big puncture wound in his back. I don't think he was going to live for long, but I was trying to kind of I had this pizza box lid, and I was kind of trying to, I wasn't touching the bat, I was kind of touching the ground behind the bat, trying to encourage him to fly away. Oh, my wife watched the video, said you're being mean to that bat. Scared him, but anyway. And then the next day they killed another bat, but that bat was gone before I could get to him. I think they've killed 3 bats, and that's probably it. They always appear around this time in August, so I don't know where they're coming from, man. Oh, but I was telling a story. I was sitting in this chair, and I had the TV on behind me a few episodes ago. And the background was the 1967 Hanna-Barbera Fantastic Four cartoon was playing just in the background while I was talking. Well, because that was playing in the background, you could hear some of the sound of it. It had a copyright claim, which is not a copyright. Doesn't hurt. It's not a copyright strike. Copyright claim just means that maybe your video can't be seen in Russia or Iran or Cuba, and you can never monetize it. And I don't know, I've got a couple of people that subscribe lately, but it'll be forever before I get up to 1,000 subscribers and can even think about monetizing this channel. But I must be losing weight because my wedding ring look how loose it is, man. Or I'm shrinking. Like in Incredible Shrinking Man. Didn't his wedding ring, it seems like that was the first thing that happened, his wedding ring fell off. Oh, yeah, the Fantastic Four was playing. And you think, well, it was that evil Disney Corporation had a copyright claim against you, right? Because they own Fantastic Four. No, it was Warner Brothers. As Warner Brothers owns Hanna-Barbera. So the Fantastic Four cartoon from 1967 is actually owned by Warner Brothers. And I thought that was ironic because, at the time, Warner Brothers' Superman movie was going up against Disney's Fantastic Four movie. But Warner Brothers actually owns the rights to the Fantastic Four cartoon from the 60s. And they'll never release that Fantastic Four cartoon on disc. I don't think they would. And they might not be able to because that's kind of the same issue that happened with the Batman 1966 TV show, because it was made by 20th Century Fox, but Batman the character was owned by Warner Brothers, and they had to really work that all out in order to put out that box set of the Batman TV series on DVD, because you have 2 different owners there. But I don't think they'll ever put out the Fantastic Four series just because I just don't think they would. Plus, no one is. They're still putting out DVDs and Blu-rays, but it's just really for special collectors. Most people, average normies, just stream movies now. It's a shame. But like they said, soon you will own nothing and you will be happy. The World Economic Forum. You'll live in a little pod and food will be brought to you, and but those 1960s superhero cartoons are great, and Disney is very jealously guarding their properties. The 1966 TV series that had Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, and Submariner. They own all that. They could put it out on the Disney Channel, Disney streaming, whatever that's called, Disney Plus, but they don't. There's somebody that has episodes on the Internet Archive database. You can watch those Marvel cartoons, but someone put a little warning in front of them that these exhibit the things from the past that are not good, the attitudes from the past. In other words, they're not politically correct. They're probably talking about the Mandarin and stuff like that. I don't know. Just the fact that women are in fear and having to be protected by the men, that's probably problematic too. We need to have a conversation about it. Yeah, they'll never put those out. Never. But this is weird. If you look around on YouTube, go to the Disney, or just search. Disney has found the master tapes, the original recordings of the theme songs to the Hulk and Iron Man and all five of those great Jacques Urbant, I believe, was the name of the French guy that wrote those songs, and they're great. And anyway, so if you go to YouTube, you can hear. Actually, I think they put them out on 45s too, and it's it's like the singers are right there in front of you. It's from the master tape, so that you can hear on YouTube. So seek that out. Something, I've had revelations about Stan Lee lately. And they say Stan Lee's a liar. He says he created those characters, but I understand where he's coming from. I really do, because what I've been doing lately, all summer, Suno.com. My friend Randy told me about it, and you go to Suno.com and you can write your own lyrics for a song. And then you could say, I want a female singer. Say, I want it to be like, I want it to be, I can describe what her voice will sound like, or maybe I want 4 male singers. So I want it to maybe sound like the Beach Boys. I want it to be I want it to sound like it's 1963, and I'll put surf. I can choose the instruments. And so that sent me off like, what is the exact instruments that are used on Runaway by Del Shannon? Because I love that organ solo in the middle of that song. It's like that's always been one of my favorite songs. Okay, so what is the organ? Okay, so the Doors use a Hammond organ. That's a great sound. And what are the exact instruments that the B-52s use on Rock Lobsters, so I can kind of get that sound? but I want to have, girl singers or a combination of, or maybe I want it to sound like 1969 Sunshine Pop, like the Coca-Cola singers on the mountaintop. Or maybe I want it to sound like bubblegum rock, bubblegum pop, like the Archies. Or maybe this one I could, I'll, you can just come up with different ideas. And, or sometimes you can have all the instruments you want. This is the year I want this to sound like a song from 1957. I want it to sound like rockabilly from 1955. I want it to be a male singer. I want there to be lots of echo on his voice. It's artificial intelligence, and you punch all this stuff in, and then you hit create, and then about 5 seconds later, you get two versions of a song, and then you pick which one you think's better, or you might like both, or you might hate both and throw them in the trash can. But they're fully realized songs, and sometimes you can just say, "Well, there's a movie, Frankenstein's Bloody Terror." Sometimes you can just type in Frankenstein's Bloody Terror and let it come up with its own words, and then a song appears, or you could write every word out, and when there's going to be a solo here, and there's you tell this is where I want call and response. You can tell it. You can be very specific, or you could just say just a few words and let it come up with its own ideas, which is fun because then you get to see what a robot thinks and how. And so, like I typed in. What did I type in? Oh, I don't know, but it just, my point is, Stan Lee tells Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby, this is what I want to have happen in this issue. I want to have Fantastic Four meet God, and I want to, have the Watcher warn, them and everything. And Jack Kirby says, okay, got it. And goes out and creates something, brings it back, and then Stanley said, oh, this is great. Who's this guy flying around on a surfboard? He says, oh, well, that's the Herald. It's like a fallen angel kind of guy to the God character here, Galactus. And Stanley says, that's great. And then after a few years, he's forgotten he didn't create the Silver Surfer. He didn't even tell him about that. That's something Jack Kirby came up with, because he came up with the idea of having the Fantastic Four fight this God character. And or depending on how much you after you write enough of these songs, just like he wrote a lot of comics, you kind of forget what you created and what the robots added to your creation. Because I write the whole song out, but then and I say use a Hammond organ, but the robots are the ones playing the Hammond organ and creating the melody and everything, and because I'm not putting the musical notes in. And so that's at least 50% of the creation of the song. But I'm thinking, look at all these great songs I'm making, but in reality, it's a lot more than that, and it's the robots, taking from hearing. I'm sure millions of records have been fed into this artificial intelligence, so but it's really a fascinating thing. But it really gives me an insight into collaborating with someone, or in this case, something else, an artificial intelligence, although it probably is demonic. It's probably spirits working through these computers. It is. I mean, they say it's artificial, but it is intelligent. They do. Uh, uh, um, it does think, and it does have a sense of humor, and it does get what you're trying to do, and it can it understands you. It elaborates on what you're doing, and it's something else. I'm so anyway. Point is, that robot, artificial intelligence, without my input, would never be able to create those songs, and 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 I would never be able to create those songs without the robot. So it's I'm not trying to refer to Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and everyone else as robots, but to say Stan Lee had did nothing is ridiculous, because Stan Lee couldn't do it without Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, because in his old age he doesn't have those guys. He's done, how about Stripperella, and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko couldn't do it without Stan Lee. They could create pretty pictures, but they never could get it quite, because his Stan Lee's voice, when you say a writer's voice, I don't know if you were taught this in high school, but a writer's voice isn't how they sound. It's like if I pick up a book and start reading it, and without looking at the cover, this is Hunter S. Thompson. I can pick up another book. I can tell. You can tell a writer by reading a few paragraphs if they have a strong enough voice, which is an inner voice. It's the way that they think, put down on paper. And Stan Lee, you could always tell a Marvel comic was written by Stan Lee versus ones that weren't. And I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. But as much as I hate artificial intelligence, I love it, because, like, look at the stuff that is on YouTube, man. I mean, if I could see a 2-hour movie like this, man, I mean, come on. Yeah, I mean, it's not. It's pretty great. You got to admit, it's pretty great. Okay, well, I got stuff to do. One thing I got to do. Well, I got a lot to do, man. Got to turn these lights off is one thing. The cats have figured out how to get up on top of the pinball machine. I got a bunch of comic books up there that I got to take upstairs, because they're going to knock them all down on the floor. So that's some. I don't even know where everybody. The cats must be on the front porch. Yeah, because every day they like to get sun. Let's see. Oh, there's Callie. Yeah, and over here, there's the other cat. Look at them sunbathing out here. Well, it's going to be fall before we know it, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Anyway, it's fun to write music about, like, your favorite comic books or movies. And like this morning, I wrote a song about the Mighty Samson, the Gold Key comics character that lives in the second Stone Age after a nuclear war in what used to be New York. And I don't think anyone's ever written a song about that Samson. There's lots of songs about the Mighty Samson from the Bible, but not that Samson. Golly Moses. These people that are so depressed they have to go to psychiatrists because they want to live in the world of Avatar. This is the world I want to live in. Man. There's another show like Peacemaker. It's called Fallout. It's based on an old video game. And it's also a lot of fun, but also puts in unnecessary dirty stuff into it. Fallout, the best I can, but it's set in its basic premise is there was a nuclear war in the 1950s, and it's got this 1950s mid-century aesthetic to it with the music and everything, but it's in this apocalyptic world, people living underground and mutants up above, and there's this cowboy that's kind of immortal that it was a movie star, like a Roy Rogers type, but now he's like this guy that roams the wasteland. He has no nose. And what it really reminds me of, the Fallout series, is Eerie Magazine from Warren, because Eerie Magazine was just like creepy until the 70s, and they started having superheroes that continued from issue to issue. And Creepy and Eerie were comics, but they were, well, aimed at maybe 14-year-olds, and they would put in little R-rated stuff into them, just the prurient kind of stuff, violence, nudity, maybe occasionally the word bastard or son of a bitch, and it would give the kids a chance to get something forbidden that the people at the bookstore, wouldn't know any better, and they'd sell it to them because they, obviously weren't going to be able to buy Playboy, but Creepy and Eerie, Vampirella, those, they could get those. So, but Fallout's kind of like that. We're watching that series. I think there's a second season about to come on. All these shows that are on these pay channels have to feel like they've got to put in stuff into the show that's extreme to make people feel like they're getting their money's worth for paying for it. Yeah, how about that? Look at this. This is Halloween Hot Wheels. They had a display at the supermarket with these Halloween Hot Wheels, and this one kind of looks like that Glenn Danzig skull. Nah, I guess it looks more like a gremlin, doesn't it? Anyway, they had a whole bunch of these. Just picked one up. Look at this Christmas tree ornament. I got it, I think this was sent by my mother-in-law last year. I think she got it from Temu. Anyway, got to put it back on the Christmas tree. The cats knocked him down. Cats have knocked this tree down several times, but now he's back on the tree. Anyway, I don't have anything more to say, so I'll maybe do another show later. Take care.